All right, so we're going to get started. Welcome to our um June. Dang, it's June. Financial Empowerment Roundtable. Wow. Um, I'm Michelle Mitchell. I am the owner here at Mitchell Consulting. We've been in business now for 14 years in August. And I started out in the accounting industry. My background is in accounting. I have two master's degrees in organizational management and career and technical education. And we I started Mitchell Consulting to help small businesses with their accounting and their QuickBooks, and it has evolved into so much more after over the last 14 years. Um, and as part of that, we have our lovely team, which is Evan, who's on the call today. He is our accounting supervisor. Lauren is our business advisor, and she's out today attending a high school graduation. And Eric is our bookkeeper, and he is traveling today. So I would
But
like to go ahead. Oh,
I was saying, but I'm still here.
oh,
But I
he's
am
still
trapped.
here.
I'm not on
Yeah,
video. Yeah.
Eric's here.
Committed.
He's on the phone. So we would like for each of you to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do so we know who's in the room.
I can go first.
Sure.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Sarah Shelb. I recently connected with Lauren earlier this week, actually. So I'm exploring investing in your services, and it's really excited to find you all because I launched my business back in March. I am I'm a creative marketer. My background is in I've been a creative director at agencies, graphic designer for the last 10 years. And in my time, like I was able to really scale a team and increase revenue for our agency. And I was like, well, I kind of hit a ceiling, and I was like, you know what? I did it here. Why not do it for myself? So
Nice.
that's kind of where I'm at. I've always had more of like that entrepreneurship mindset. So I'm really excited to have taken the leap. And I am just seeking business, financial, all the back end advice because I am a natural creative and numbers are not my forte. So I'm really excited to be here and learn from you all. Um, yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Welcome.
Cool. I
All
guess I'll
right.
go.
Sure.
I'm Tony Mitchell. I run Textural Sound and Visuals. We do full service audio video production work. We do like commercials, documentaries, we record bands, do music videos, a wide range of, if it does video and does audio, we probably do it. But yeah, I started my company in 2020. I have a team of two people, Paul and Angel. I also will echo what you said, Sarah. I hit a wall. And I just recently got off a meeting with the Mitchell consulting team yesterday and kind of realized that like I need to grow. Like like I thought I was doing a lot of growing already, and I hit a new level, and now we're growing even further. So the productions get bigger and the jobs get crazier, but I love it. So doing what I love. Happy to be here. Happy to be in conversation.
Welcome.
I'll go.
Hi,
Hi,
Terry.
I'm Terry Pease, and I am a retired college professor and nonprofit consultant of various sorts, generally in a field having to do with sexual abuse and domestic violence and those difficult things in life. And I left my work 10 years ago, or more than that, but when my husband's Parkinson's disease sort of galloped out of control. And so I spent time being his caregiver. And after my husband died, I wrote a book about being a Parkinson's disease caregiver. And that has led to an online business that is kind of growing because the need is so strong. And what I don't have, I mean, I have an entrepreneurial mindset when it comes to reaching out to people and getting my information to them and all that good stuff. But it has taken me a ridiculous amount of time to realize that it's okay to charge for what I do.
Yeah.
And so I'm very haphazard in how I have monetized this. And yet it's very clear to me that what I'm doing is something that many, many people want. So I've launched one course, sort of not against my will, but with not knowing I was moving in that direction. And it did very well for a week. My mom died, and I just kind of shut down from marketing it. So I haven't made any more money since that first $6,000 week. So I need business advice. I need how to manage the books. I need how to make QuickBooks worth the investment. I need help. And so when I connected with Michelle and her company, I thought these are people who can do for me what my longtime financial people have not done, which is to make me comfortable, explain what's going on, help me make good decisions, and to not feel like I'm cringing every time I have to call them. So I'm really happy. And I've already been working with Michelle and company for a couple months. And I already feel less tied up in knots about the financial aspect of the work that I'm doing. And I'm on a path to do well financially as long as I do what I need to do and do what I'm told. So I'm really glad to be here. So tell me.
Sure. Well, welcome, Terry.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Terry. It's very
And
sweet.
this is why we do these things. Timothy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I am Timothy Day with Day Financial Enterprise. I've been in the tax and accounting field for a number of years, but I just recently transitioned from a sole proprietorship. I said recently, but about 2, 3 years ago, to an LLC and expanding into not only tax and accounting, but doing life and health insurance in terms of planning for protection for family and retirement goals and those types of things. So looking to expand and do more in that particular area. And I echo the same sentiments in terms of, being sure to charge for what you do, because in our community, there's a lot of education that needs to take place.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes education does not, you know, translate into dollars. So, but having people be vested in their future to the point where they are willing to pay for those services in terms of receiving the education that's needed to better their position financially.
Awesome. I feel your sentiment. Yes. So we have to translate value, right? Sandy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I am Sandy. I am on the West Coast. I am a colleague of Michelle's, so I offer accounting and bookkeeping services as well, no taxes. And I'm just here to learn more about how Michelle does what Michelle does.
Thanks for being here, Sandy. Okay.
Sure.
So thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. Now you know a few more people and you can go in the chat and, talk to each other if you like. It's about building community for us. And like everybody pretty much talked about the educational piece of financial literacy. This is why we do these every month. And we have a different topic every month for our Financial Empowerment Roundtable. Whether you're an accountant, like colleague of mine, or you're a business owner, you will walk away with value every time because the conversations are so rich when we have these roundtables every month. So this month we are talking about pricing and pricing your services for profit. So we're going to kick it off with Evan talking about pricing a little bit, and then we're going to get into some of the psychology and mindset blocks that we have about commanding the price that you deserve because of the value that you're giving your client. So take it away, Evan.
Sure. Yeah. Just thanks everyone for being here. After hearing introductions, it seems like everyone does different things, but the through point, aside from needing like financial education, is all of you all have like a service. You work in the service industry. You're not selling hard goods, which even in going to like university for accounting, most of what we talked about when it came to pricing had to do with selling physical goods, which seems a little more cut and dry. It's easier for you to assess what things cost, and then you price it up from that. The conversation gets a little harder when we're dealing with folks that provide a service, and most of the clients we work with are providing services, and so this is kind of the realm that we operate in, have expertise, and it's awesome that everyone here sort of also falls into that category. So I don't know, it seems like the conversation around pricing feels very, yeah, it feels very cut and dry to people, but there's a lot more room for subjectivity, I think, than most people realize. So right here we have just sort of 4 basic pricing structures that you can use to sort of start this conversation or start the process of knowing how to like value and sell your services. The first being cost plus pricing. That's pretty standard. You're going to basically figure out what it costs you to provide your service, and then make sure that you're selling your things at a price that doesn't put your business underwater. That's a little bit more of the objective side, which I do think lives in all of these, but that's just more of the like numbers focused one. Michelle, you want to talk about value-based real quick?
Yeah, so value-based pricing is translating the value of what you do to your client. And if they value it, they will pay for it, right? So we are typically not creatures who purchase things that, we don't see value in. But when you're talking about an intangible service, it is up to us to convey the value that we bring to the client. And a lot of times when we're thinking about value-based pricing, is the problem that your client is trying to solve big enough for the service that you're going to deliver? And in return, do they see value in that exchange? So that's basically what value-based pricing is. It's not necessarily a set in stone kind of pricing, because we may have one client that comes to us and they really value reporting and they want detailed reports for whatever their business is. And that's what they value more than maybe trying to learn QuickBooks, right? So we try to find in our sales conversations what the client, what their biggest pain point is and what they're trying to achieve, and we base the price on that. So that's basically value-based pricing.
The third, we have hourly versus project-based pricing, which Tony, maybe at some point in this call, we can have you sort of speak on that, since we had a long meeting on it yesterday. That conceptually just being, are you like rigidly tracking your hours, or are you approaching people with the cost of the final project that you're going to do for them? Those things can go hand in hand, but sort of similar to value-based pricing. You want to be conveying to your clients what you're providing for them, and that value might be worth more than what your hourly rate is and how many hours it takes for you to finish a project. I think in general, a lot of businesses are moving this way. I really appreciate working somewhere that both implements this and also like works with clients to sort of push this broader narrative, because it's less about, doing like a hard nickel and diming of things. It's showing the value you bring and presenting that to someone and saying like, even if this didn't take as many hours as I anticipated, this is going to provide X, Y, and Z for you, and you're really going to appreciate it. So it kind of leans a little more into you valuing your skills and, really leaning into the fact that what you have is unique and you've started a business because of that. So not underselling yourself and not, well, we're going to talk about imposter syndrome a little bit, but I feel like that also kind of falls into there. And then something like retainer pricing, which is similar to project-based pricing, but it's basically just having your clients sort of pay up front and then you do work to offset what they've paid you. So this is a nice way to, if you are dealing with like cash flow issues, this is a nice way to help alleviate that a little bit. you can get payment up front and then be tracking your work to deduct how much you have from that person. I think that this does require a little more back-end work of tracking your hours and being a little more rigid with all the specific work you do for a client. We often see this, like we work with some attorneys that are doing like retainer pricing. That's most of my experience in working with this, but I think that it can apply in, other like creative, or I guess just like broader fields than just that.
Yeah. I would say retainer pricing is also if you have a very large project that you're doing for someone, you can charge a retainer upfront to cover, a certain percentage of the project. And that's the retainer that they give you, and then they pay the rest over time as the project is being completed.
And it's worth noting that all of these, the choosing one of these has to do with how your business operates, how you value your business, but also kind of the kind of clients that you're approaching and wanting to work with. If you're working primarily with really small businesses that maybe have tighter cash flow, then something like retainer pricing might not work. But if you're approaching large businesses that are not like resource starved, then it's a much easier ask to, ask for a couple $1,000s up front to work against it. Just something to consider.
Sure.
Okay, so here we have, this is also another thing that we have sort of implemented here at Mitchell Consulting. A lot of what we'll talk about when we're getting into valuing our services has to do with, at least what I've observed, the main fear that people have in properly valuing what they're providing is scaring away clients with too high of a price point. Making it, having too there's just like there's like barrier to entry for folks. So what we've done is we've sort of built out like a tier system where once we have done all of the like calculations and thought experiments about how we value our work, we then sort of split into tiers and think of different ways to engage with specific clients. So we have a lower tier, which is, obviously costs less and requires less time and effort from us. And that sort of works as like an easy sort of get someone in the door, especially if you're having issues with conveying the value of your services or the value of whatever you're providing. Having a lower cost option makes it easier for people to sort of initially come in and start working with you. And then chances are you're going to be doing something that is very valuable and really works for them. And it's much easier to, okay, we've been working together for a couple months at this tier, and I've identified ways that maybe you could start moving forward. You can start to have the conversation of moving up, to a higher tier that is more intensive for you and a little bit more costly to them. It's easier to go from $100 a month to 200 to 300 versus someone coming in and saying, how am I going to afford to pay $300 when I don't really know what I'm getting into with this organization? And those tiers can look very different based on the business and again, based on the clients you're working with. But we've just found that it works out nicely when, a lot of the driver behind this conversation is I'm having trouble getting people in the door, even though I know what I'm providing is unique and very valuable. You can sort of also be approaching different size clients if you have these tiers based on however they work with the business structure that you have.
Yeah, and I would just like to add, like, in the previous slide, we talked about the different pricing structures, and each of those pricing structures you can apply the pricing tiers to the good, better, best. So, like Evan said, if, someone is not quite sure what they want or what they need, starting out with a good option for them is an option, because otherwise you might lose that person. The other thing I would say is that sometimes when you're as the owner not comfortable with the price you need to quote, you don't want to lose that client, right? You don't want to lose them. But what I would like to say is that maybe it's not the right client. And that's a scary thought to have, right? But sometimes it is. They're just not quite the right fit for you, and you're trying to make them fit. But if someone really does want to work with you and you are a good match, having these 3 types of tiers will help them really focus in on what's most valuable to them in each of the tiers, and then they can make a decision much easier for pricing. And it just gives your potential client a choice in the pricing as well.
Mhm. I also do want to add to that that if you are taking this approach where you're having different tiers, just try to be very conscious of. Are y'all familiar with the idea of like scope creep?
Mhm.
So just keep that in mind because it can
Yes.
get very easy to, kind of like you were saying, Michelle, like it feels it's hard to think to yourself, maybe this isn't the right client, and you don't ever want to feel like you're leaving money on the table or turning someone away. But what can come of that is, someone coming on at a lower tier, and because you want to be providing the best service for them, they might start asking for things that are of a higher tier without, actually contractually signing up for that. So if you're going to have different tiers, just make sure that you're very clear about your boundaries with the person. And you don't have to draw a hard line and be like rude to them, but you can, I feel like we found ourselves in situations where we're kind of getting asked to do more and more, and you can just very politely just say like, currently, like the way we operate is in this tier. We said we provide X, Y, and Z. We're very happy to do more for you, but just so you know, we need to, in the same way that you're running a business trying to turn profit, we're doing the same. We need to value our time and our efforts and our expertise. And you can sort of open up more of like a dialogue about what they need from you and how you can provide that versus just, having a hard line saying, this is out of scope. I'm not going to do that for you.
Exactly. There is flexibility
Mhm.
always. Yeah.
So I know some of y'all have been to our roundtables before. You're probably starting to see some degree of like a through point, which is we're kind of always taking this two-hand approach to things, which is what I really appreciate that we do here is thinking about the business owner as a person, not just as like a business entity. You started a business because you have a creative idea, you're passionate about it, and you want to make a living off of it. Um, People often forget to think about the individual that's behind the business. So what I appreciate that we do is thinking hard about who's running the business and what works best for them. Um, all of that often is built on a foundation of using hard data and making informed decisions on what you're trying to convey to your clients. So the two-handed approach that I feel like we're always taking is it's always reliant heavily on data so that you can make a smart decision, but then taking that product and making sure that that actually fits for you as an individual, making sure that it aligns with your values, both your personal values and the values of people that you're going to be working with. So when we're talking about pricing, we sort of start in this more objective realm where, so this slide details numbers that you need to know. The first one, you would be surprised at how often people don't really consider this. In the same way that it's very easy for the individual behind the business to get lost in the shadow of the business. Like people, you're trying to scale and you're trying to grow your business. You're focused on bringing in a profit and improving your business, but oftentimes people are not thinking about how to pay themselves. And it's very easy for that to feel like a noble cause, like I'm investing my time in this, but it also is a pretty quick equation for burnout at a certain point. So things like what you want to be taking home, operating costs, pretty straightforward things like rent, what you're paying your employees, your utilities. Variable costs, materials are a little less relevant when we're talking about providing a service, but a lot of folks,
Software.
yeah, true. And also like subcontractors, if you are taking on bigger projects that you might just be an individual in your business, but you might need to contract out some of that work. The time and effort, which is also part of the calculation of what it costs. And then things like overhead versus cost of service or cost of goods sold. Overhead is more or less just all of the other like outlier expenses that you do have to pay to be in operation, whereas cost of goods sold are things that you're incurring specifically to do a project. So the moral of all of this is basically we want to take this subjective side, which Michelle will get into after this, of how do I value my work, but also we use the objectivity to know that there is a certain point there's a certain price that you really can't go below because you have certain costs to cover as a business. So we're kind of taking this approach where, okay, we're going to go through our historic data and see what it truly costs to operate, both to provide the service and also to make sure that we're paying ourselves and paying our team and taking care of everyone that has a stake in the business. And then chances are that rate that you're going to get is, the number you're calculating is basically to break even, which is ultimately not the goal. We want to be turning a profit and, ideally scaling up our business. So you'll do all these calculations, get a number, and then now you can move into the subjective side and say, how do I feel about valuing my time at that? How do I feel about growth as a business just at that price point? And so I think this is a good starting place, but from what I've experienced, people are almost always underpricing themselves. And I think it's because they lean too heavily into just the objective side of it.
That is true. But I also want to keep in mind that in order to have a basis for pricing, we need to have really good bookkeeping. And bookkeeping is the foundational piece in order to start this conversation. Because if we don't know what the numbers are, we don't have a basis for it. And we can't separate out our variable and fixed expenses. We don't know what our gross profit margins are. There's a lot of things that we don't know if we're not tracking in our bookkeeping processes so that we can gather those numbers, and then we can start analyzing those numbers. And then we can start making decisions about, is my pricing effective or not? So
And another piece worth tracking too is what we just talked about was a lot of like hard expenses and amounts. Another thing that I see business owners not doing is tracking the hours that they're working,
true.
which I know can be tedious. But you're probably doing a lot more than it feels like, especially if you're like one person running a business. You're wearing a lot of different hats, and while sure you maybe only did 6 hours of like direct client project work in a day, how much back end were you doing?
Yeah.
How much time went into even just setting up the business and like recruiting those clients? So that is also another variable that's going to factor into when you're deciding your price, is not necessarily just your take home pay, but also the amount of hours that you're working to earn that take home pay. Because I feel like we've worked with folks that sort of try to reverse engineer it, and they say like, I feel comfortable, taking X amount of money per month from the business, which is sure that might satisfy like the needs and bills that you have. But then when you sort of hold that next to the amount of hours you're working, it could be looking like a pretty low rate. Something that that's oftentimes lower than what you even feel comfortable like paying staff on your team. So we want to just sort of drive the point home that it's easy to undervalue yourself, but just remember that like what you're doing and why you have a business is because you're good at it and you're passionate about it and it's something unique, and you ought to, be compensated for that.
Exactly. Which leads to this topic. Pricing starts with your mindset about money, how you feel about money, how you feel about your value, how you feel. Do you feel even worthy enough to charge what you should be charging? And the thing I always ask people when we're having the pricing conversation is, how long did it take for you to get to where you are today? Like it's more than just that 1 hour of time and the value of that 1 hour of time. But really, what has it taken? How much experience do you have? How much education do you have? Having a business, you're interacting with different types of clients all the time. So you see more than one scenario. What's the value of that? Because you have learning lessons from those experiences that show up that help you help your client. So a lot of times people do have fear about charging too much. And we had a conversation with Tony yesterday, and he was talking about he was doing a project and they wanted something to be rushed. And he was afraid to say what his rush price was, and he stated it, and they just accepted it. They didn't even question it. So like he was falling into this, oh, I don't know, am I worthy enough, the imposter syndrome, to even say this amount?
And let's just say, like, I did it. It was
Yeah,
like a 4 hour turnaround on a video after we
yeah,
had just finished filming. And I not only did it, but I like knocked it out the park. It was like, it was so good.
yeah,
But like all those years of experience taught me how to get to, like, I did all the things that I've learned in like 2 hours.
hmm,
And I walked away like, oh, wow, that was, but we also have a good system. Like, we built a really good system in our
right,
team to be able to like produce videos quickly.
yeah,
And it kind of all came to a head that day, which was really
yeah.
cool.
Which, after they were like, oh, of course, you know, that imposter syndrome can just go away because you are good at your craft, and people see that intrinsic value, and sometimes we don't see it in ourselves because it's such a part of who we are. We don't even see that it's valuable. So the pricing
Let me just say,
mindset. Yeah,
preach,
go ahead.
preach, because like,
Yeah.
man, yeah, it's so real, so
Yeah,
true.
because we don't even see it in ourselves. It takes someone else to tell us, that our craft is valuable to them, which is why they pay for it, right? So we want to combat this imposter syndrome every time because you are good at what you do. You wouldn't have started a business if you weren't. And if you didn't want to impact people's lives or change something that is a problem for them, you wouldn't have done that. If it's a calling. It's a calling. As an entrepreneur, you have stepped out. You are the 2% because you've stepped out from amongst the mass of people and said, you know what? I think I can deliver this in a different way. So that is valuable. So I love that about his story when he was telling us about that yesterday. So shifting to a positive mindset is just understanding and articulating the value that you offer. And a lot of times we need to receive um, comments back from our clients because we don't sometimes see the value. We see that what we do, they need, but there's also this underlining thing about why this particular client connected with you. And it's because there's something about you that they really like in delivering the thing that you want to deliver to them. That, other people can do the same thing. There are other accountants in the world, like there are other marketers or videographers or, you know, but there's something unique about you, and you need to lean into that uniqueness. And that uniqueness can come through in your pricing as well because you are different. You are different than other people. Um, and just um, really leaning into what people tell you about your services can help build that confidence for you. Using market research does support pricing. We do look at market research when we're talking about pricing. My coach just told me that our pricing is too low. And I'm like, what? Wait a minute. What you say? And at every level, at every level of growth, there's a new mindset about pricing and about money and about worthiness. And she was just challenging me about that at the next level. So you think you conquer it at one level, and then it shows its ugly head again. And that means you just need to do some more internal work to get comfortable with that. Practicing affirmations work, being around other peer groups, like people who are in your same space, because I can pretty much guarantee that your family is not trying to start a business for the most part. Like they're looking at you like, yeah, you're a unicorn, you go do that. I'm gonna go get my regular paycheck, you know? So you need to surround yourself. That's why I love doing these roundtables, because we surround ourselves with like-minded people. That helps us develop professionally and boost our own confidence. So I would like for us to have a discussion now about pricing and the mindset of pricing, and what maybe some of the challenges you faced throughout your journey as an entrepreneur, because we all need help in this area. Yes, we can give you some concrete data. We have a calculator that the team has developed on how to take the components of your services and build a pricing structure. But there's also other intrinsic values that come into play. So we have to consider that as well. So we use hard data and we use soft data to come up with our pricing. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing for a second and just see if we can have a conversation about maybe some challenges you've had with pricing, or maybe you have something that you're trying to price and you don't even know how to think about it. So it's open floor. Sure, Terry.
I will jump in because as I just put in the chat, excuse me, that is my story. I have an online business. And so for me, it sort of feels like vaporware because it's just emails, even though I've been spending a lot of hours and a lot of years building this thing. And I get emails every day saying, oh, thank God you're a gift. I mean, really dramatic comments because my people are in a world of hurt with what they're living with. And yet I can't, I mean, my bottom tier online course, I have been charging $97 for, and I'm in a huge cash crunch right now. And so I knocked 30% off that just to see if that would increase my sales. That's probably the exact opposite of all of what you're talking about here.
Yes.
But it's like, I need somebody to do, remember Cher in Moonstruck, where she turns to Ronnie, I think, and just snap out of it.
Snap out of it.
That's what I need.
Yeah. So even if you're charging at a lower tier, there's something else you can offer that your audience or your potential clients are looking for. And it could be just that reach out, like the one-on-one. Like, I know what you're struggling with. We've been through it, or I've helped other people through it, and showcasing that way. I'm not necessarily sure that lowering the price is a good idea, but what if you added a one-on-one like coaching with it? Because you've been through it. You've had the experience, right? And maybe Sarah, from a marketing perspective, can chime in, because marketing and positioning is very important when it comes to pricing. So, it's going to be a combination of having that, like the hard data that Evan was talking about, but then like, how do you position that for value in front of the client, which is that marketing piece.
It could also be like in like what you're providing, Terry, like you could just like add another personal element to it, not even just a meeting people one-on-one, that could be even a third tier, but like, what's another way that you can get personal with people outside of your weekly or monthly email list that you're sending out, emails that you're sending out.
Well, I do a lot of that already, and I'm just not charging for it. I have a once a week Q&A, Ann Landers style thing where people say, what do I do because he's incontinent, or what do I do because he's mean to me, or what do I do so we can go on vacation together? And I answer that. That becomes a Q&A email.
Offer coaching session.
Yeah.
Offer a coaching session to help them solve that problem. Yes, there's like, we give a lot of free information away. Like, I have no problem giving away free like information. But a lot of times where people get stuck is in the implementation. And that's where we can help people the most, is in the implementation part. And that is above and beyond the lowest tier, right?
Right.
Help with the implementation. So just shifting your mindset and your framework around that pricing and how you can help, because you're offering a Q&A session, but they're not solving their problem, because you're giving away free information. But a lot of times what people need is for you to hold their hand. And
Yeah.
there's value in holding the hand. Yeah,
That's helpful.
good.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any thoughts or ideas about that?
I think it's just really important to ask questions to your clients and try and find that unique piece of value that you can bring to them, because everyone in every industry, like, it's going to be different, and it depends on who your target audience is or who your ideal customer is and what is going to impact them the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really just, guys, it's really just having the conversation so you can uncover some of these things, right? We can't be afraid of having the conversation, because you're coming from it from an expertise standpoint. But when you speak to your client or your potential client, you're trying to uncover from them what their biggest pain points are that you can solve with your expertise. And there's levels to expertise, you know? Like we said, in the tiered pricing model, you know, there's good, better, best. So where do they want to meet you? And that's where you start. But then you can build that relationship as you go along and as you're delivering that service.
I think that's right. And that's really helpful because, I mean, I have hundreds of messages from people who sign up for my email list saying what they want. I specifically ask them, why are you here? What do you want? And I have tons of data. I haven't just got somebody now helping me to compile that data so that I can do more than just sort of an armchair integration of that, you know, in my head.
Yeah,
And
it's just like the financial numbers. We compile the data. Like, you may be able to compile the data, but can you analyze the data? And you may just need someone to help you analyze the data, which, you know, you're the customer trying to find someone to help you analyze that marketing data that you have already collected. So it's the same thing with the financials. Like, you may have collected the data, but now what? How do I use it to make business decisions? How do I use it to position myself for pricing for profit? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right where I am. So I'll keep listening. I don't want to monopolize the time.
No
I have
problem.
one other thought for you, Terry.
Yeah.
Maybe play around with experimenting too, like what those packages look like. So, and then just see which one is more well received.
Exactly. You know what? Pricing is always it can change with each new client. It is never set in stone, because as you engage with different types of customers, you begin to see what is resonating and what is not, you know, and you want to do more of what is resonating, which is what they're valuing more. Even though you might do some of the other things, they're just thrown in there, but what's rising to the top as value. Yeah.
That's helpful. That's
Yeah.
helpful.
Timothy, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just going to add, you know, one of the things in terms of collecting that data in the financial services space, I think sometimes people are very cautious about sharing where they are financially. You know, they know their stuff is not where it needs to be. And sometimes, you know, you don't necessarily get full disclosure in terms of, you know, this is where I really am. And so in terms of being able to effectively help them through that, it's a matter of building and developing that relationship so that they have that level of confidence and trust to say, I can share this with you, and you're here to look out for my best interests.
Right. People have to know, like, and trust you. No matter what the service is, they have to know, like, and trust you. And the more you build that trust, like once you gain that customer, the more you build that trust with that customer, they will begin to share things with you because they trust you. But sometimes, like for pricing purposes, they start with that lowest tier because they don't know if they can trust you yet. It's just that black and white. They don't know if they can trust you yet. But once you deliver, then they're like, huh, I wonder if, and they'll start thinking about, okay, maybe I gave you a little bit of what's going on, but now let me give it to you. Because now I trust you. And in exchange for that trust, we are able to charge a price because we are in business. It is an exchange, and it's a flow. Cash flows. So we exchange that cash for the value that we're delivering. So hopefully that that's helpful. And I know in the financial space, it really does take people like, I don't know. I'll give you this little bit. But the more you show up for them, they will show up for you. So
Well said.
So maybe I'll hop in. You had a thing earlier, Evan. I forget what the slide was. It was like value on your time. It was like hourly versus
Versus project.
project based.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I met
go
with
back to the slide.
I think I got it. Hourly
Okay.
versus project based.
Okay.
Yeah, I met with, if you guys don't know, Michelle is also my mother. I met with my mom and the Mitchell consulting team yesterday. So my business has been growing pretty exponentially over the past 6 months. I got a nice loan last year, and like I implemented it last year around this time. And then since then, since January, it has just like taken off, which has been like kind of a gift and turning into a curse because I realize I'm not charging enough. And really, the Mitchell Consulting team helped me realize that. But it was a lot of what I walked away after the meeting. I realized I was not valuing myself. I realized as I was talking to them, I was like looking back in hindsight, the image that they were giving me back was like, he doesn't value himself. Like he doesn't realize what he's making. Like he doesn't realize the quality of what he's putting out. And like it's even though like the story I told earlier about me like knocking that project out, the fast turnaround project out. And then I had another project right after that. We flew out to Pennsylvania, filmed a whole production. And then I actually walked away from that shoot. I was like, I really did not charge enough for this. And not because the work was like really hard, but because the value of what we were bringing was like it was like just like a whole other world. But like in terms of like what we create and like what I create is like, one of my dreams in the world is to get an Oscar. Like my intention of making films and making like art is like at the highest of qualities, the highest of levels. And it comes through, it really does come through. And I think I didn't really realize that I was there yet. And even though I had been doing the work and like all the stuff I've been putting out has been like really good. And we actually won an award earlier this year for a music video we put out. And my mom was like, even in the meeting, was like, you're an award-winning like director, like listen to like, and I still didn't hear it. And it took me like thinking over it for the past like 24 hours and like, oh yeah, I need to value myself. And also I want to keep my team together, and like I need to make more money to keep my team together because we're so good. We're just like, we have three, like me, Paul, and Angel. We're just like a dynamic trio. So like however I can like stay with them and keep milking the creative juices that we have, like I will hold on for dear life. So I like leveling up and moving to this next level and moving on to this next like financial level is the next hurdle I have to go through.
Mhm.
Yeah. Pretty much also the pricing your time. Like we used to charge hourly, and kind of what I realized in this meeting too was that charging hourly doesn't really work for what we do anymore. So now it needs to be project based. And after talking with my team today, like an hour ago, like they were pretty much like, yeah, we can't really do hourly anymore because we're just so quick. Like the thing is like we're really fast. But it's like when we're filming, we're editing as we're filming. Like as we're filming, I know what I'm going to use this shot for exactly. And I go in the studio and I put it exactly where I thought it was going to be. And then I put all the other pieces together and then I'm done in 2 hours. And, normally it would take another team a week to do it or another person a month to do it. But like we have the right gear, we have the right mindset, we have the right intentionality in the moment. And that's why we are able to produce like high quality stuff. And like those projects get smaller because we're already working on bigger projects too. I think that's really the main thing is like we built systems to like work on high level projects. So like doing the smaller, like little one-off 30-second video is really simple for us now because like we've done a feature-length film. That's more than 30 seconds. That's a lot of seconds. So, but yeah, project
Yeah.
based price.
But one of
We've
the
also,
things,
no,
go ahead.
sorry. We've also done the retainer thing for like bigger projects too. So it's like kind of a mix. So for clients that can't afford it and the project is like really big, we've done like retainer to like pay it monthly until the production date. And then the production date happens and like, we have everything and then we keep moving forward with the project. Because how film works, you don't really need all of it until the actual filming date. So yeah. But
Right. One of the other things I like what you said was about the investment you made last year. So he made an investment last summer and he started reaping the benefits of the investment in January. So a lot of times your investment comes in before you see the benefit of it, but it should be reflected in the pricing because you made that investment. So then your pricing needs to be adjusted because now you can do things better, and it needs to be adjusted. So pricing is just flexible, and there was a point in my own business when we were just growing, and I was changing the not necessarily the model, but I was changing the pricing every time I had a new client in front of me because our learning was just going so fast, and we can deliver more in order to charge, that additional rate. So we have our last 5 minutes. So does anyone else have any questions about anything we've talked about today? The only thing I would say is just like, if you haven't booked a call, book a call with us because like if you can't tell, we're kind of passionate about this a little bit. It's not about, I don't know, for me, it's not about the accounting part of it, because that's, you just have to do that as a business owner. It's the impact. Like, I really I want to see the change in Terry. I want to see the change in Tony. I want to see it in Timothy. I want to see it in Sarah. And we have to start somewhere in order for us to begin to see the change. So, I love my team because like we make this happen for people in little bits at a time, so um we are here for you in your growth. And I just want you to know that from the owner, from my heart, like we want to see the growth. And I just get so excited about the growth that people have. And for me, it's not the financial growth. It's how you've changed as a leader that really excites me. So um if you have any questions, you can go ahead and say them now. Um, Otherwise, I want to keep to our time that we have.
I have a question, and maybe it's best to save it for another time. But piggybacking off of the conversation of transitioning from hourly to project rates, that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I'm wondering how you approach clients who are loyal and have,
Mhm.
I've been able to retain them
Mhm.
with an hourly rate, but obviously it's not sustainable.
I've done that.
How do you
You have the
have that
conversation.
conversation? Like,
Yeah.
how do you kind of nurture that conversation? And yeah, I don't know. What does
Yeah,
that
we're
look like and
shifting our
how?
business model. We're
Yeah.
going from hourly pricing to project-based or, fixed price or value price. You just tell them what it is. And most clients like, oh yeah, because I want to know exactly what my bill is going to be every month. I don't want to be surprised. you know, so it was an easy transition for us going from hourly. I mean, it's been years, like 10 years ago now, probably or more, that we went from hourly pricing um, I think we went to fixed pricing, and now we're more in the value pricing with tiers.
All right. I'll
So
have the
it's
conversation.
literally just having the conversation. Yeah.
Thank
And
Right
then
at all.
how you're going to structure those packages in each of the tiers so they make sense to the client.
And especially if you're having these conversations with like longtime clients,
Mhm.
it should be a lot easier to engage in that with them because clearly they've been around for a long time and
Mhm.
they've been seeing the value that you're providing to them. So I feel like
Yeah.
we had a couple instances where like when we were doing this process, I was so like worked up and nervous by asking a client about a price raise, and I brought it up, and she was like, "Oh yeah, like of course, like we probably
Right.
have been underpaying you, like." There, if people are engaged for a long time, there's a reason more than outside of just the like definitive service that you're providing.
Right. Yeah.
Um, can I add one thing too that you said to me a while ago, Michelle, that really resonated? Like at a certain point, we shifted from like me like hard reporting my hours and like tracking them to like here's what falls under your umbrella and like here's what I think that job is worth. And I was feeling like a type of way about it, feeling like I don't know, it kind of what Terry had said earlier, like feeling like almost it's like not fair to charge someone a certain rate. And what you came back to me and said was like, okay, well, sure, it might be taking you less time, but like the quality of your work is good. It hasn't wavered, it's improving. But basically, what it came down to was like, why should you be penalized for being better at your job?
Yeah.
Which is such an argument for value based and like project based because ideally, you're going to keep getting better at what you're doing. And just
Mhm.
because the hours required aren't there does not mean that the quality of your work is changing, does not mean that like your character is changing or anything. It's more just focused on like the end goal of what you're providing and really making sure that you're, um, communicating that value to clients. And long-term clients notice that and they feel that, and that's why they stick around.
Yeah. Exactly. So I'm going to share the screen. This is our QR code to book a call. If you haven't had a chance to do that yet, we would love to talk to you. If this pricing issue is an issue for you, let's talk about it. You can get on. Lauren will actually lead the conversation about that, but we definitely want to talk to you if you have an issue with pricing, because we've learned a lot of lessons over the last 14 years about pricing. So we want to help you. So just reach out and we'll be happy to do that. But I appreciate your time. Next month, we'll have our Financial Empowerment Roundtable. Lauren is not here, so I don't know what the topic is next month, but it's the second Wednesday of the month at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please come back and join us for whatever the topic is going to be, and bring a business friend. That would be nice if you would bring a friend. So until next time, I will bid you guys well.